McDonald Avenue is the centerpiece of Santa Rosa's historic McDonald neighborhood. Running from the rural cemetery at the north end to College Avenue at the south are 7 blocks of beautiful tree-lined streets with stately homes built in a variety of architectural styles, some dating back to the 1800s. The McDonald neighborhood was the brainchild of Mark McDonald. Born in Kentucky and educated in New York, McDonald came west as the captain of a wagon train and prospered as a merchant during Nevada's silver boom of the 1850s. He eventually moved to San Francisco, where he befriended the likes of tycoons Randolph Hearst, Charles Crocker, and Leland Stanford. In 1869, McDonald decided to build a family summer home in Santa Rosa, where he purchased 160 acres of wheat field northeast of town. He proceeded to develop this area with a wide avenue running down the center, planting blue gum eucalyptus trees on both sides of the street. One of these original trees is still standing at the corner of the McDonald Mansion. This development became known as the McDonald Addition, and lots were sold for the purpose of building grand homes. In addition to developing this residential neighborhood, McDonald bought and expanded the local water company. He built a dam, creating a lake which he named after his wife, Ralphine, and which has become the crown jewel of Howarth Park. In 1888, he brought the first steam-powered railroad to the east side of Santa Rosa by way of the future Montgomery Drive. The train depot was located on North Street, just west of the McDonald Mansion, and was in operation until the 1960s. McDonald's wife, Ralphine, was a leading member of Santa Rosa society. She was one of the founders of the Saturday Afternoon Club, the oldest continuously operating women's club in the United States. At the start, McDonald had trouble selling lots on his avenue because it was so far out of town and there were no taxis. Women in hoop skirts were not about to hike for a mile to go shopping. To solve this problem, McDonald set up the McDonald Street Rail Car, which was a horse-drawn trolley that went from the train depot in Railroad Square, up 4th Street, and up McDonald Avenue to the cemetery. Still, many people would not buy because of the frequent funeral processions that made their way down the street. But folks got over that, and in fact, many of the home's original owners, including the McDonald family, are buried in this cemetery at the end of the avenue. Between the 1870s and the 1930s, many impressive homes were built throughout the McDonald Addition, along with smaller dwellings for servants and workers. Now, travel with us along McDonald Avenue, where we highlight some of the avenue's treasures and the local history that they embody. This Gothic Revival-style house with stick elements was built in 1877. The original owners were William and Sarah Finley. Mr. Finley had been the first president of Corvallis College, now Oregon State University, and was then chosen to be the second president of Santa Rosa's Pacific Methodist College, for which College Avenue was named. That college stood where Santa Rosa Middle School now resides. The movie Happy Land, starring Don Amici and Francis D., was filmed here at the Finley House in 1942. Little 5-year-old Natasha Gurdon was discovered here while watching the filming of Happy Land. We would come to know her as Natalie Wood. The film also introduced Henry Morgan, of later MASH fame, who became a lifelong resident of Sonoma County. While much has been restored and renovated at this home, the front fence is believed to be the original from the 1870s. This bungalow-style home has been extensively altered since it was built early in the 1900s. The original owners were the Ruddicks. Mr. Ruddick was employed by the McDonald Packing Company and later served as caretaker of the Oddfellows Cemetery, which is adjacent to the Santa Rosa Rural Cemetery. Frank Sullivan moved in 1924. He was a builder who built many of the downtown structures in Santa Rosa, including the Carnegie Library, the Jacobs Building in Railroad Square, and the Doyle Building at 4th and D. Sullivan married Mary McNamara, whose family operated the Western Hotel in Railroad Square, which is now Flying Goat Coffee. Mableton, the summer home of Mark McDonald and his family, was built by T.J. Ludwig between 1877 and 1879. Its name was a tribute to the plantation house in Natchez, Mississippi, in which Ralphine McDonald grew up. Santa Rosa's Mableton home is listed on the National Register of Historic Places and consists of a variety of architectural styles. It's sometimes referred to as Steamboat Gothic for its resemblance to the flamboyant steamboats of the Mississippi. This is a very rare architectural style. The house is raised 7 feet off the ground. When it was first built, it had 11 bedrooms, a library, dining room, sitting room, and pantries, but no inside bathroom. Mark McDonald Jr. and his wife, Isabel Juilliard McDonald, moved into Mableton in 1923. They modernized the home by adding bathrooms, skylights, and renovating the landscaping. The Disney movie Pollyanna, starring Haley Mills, was filmed here in 1959.
What is it, Mom?
I thought I heard something.
Lord of mercy.
Isabel McDonald died here in 1960 at the age of 90, leaving her estate to her daughter and eventually to the University of California and Stanford University. By 1972, the mansion had fallen into disrepair. Its 5 acres, house, and carriage house was offered to the city of Santa Rosa for $165,000. The city declined. A developer proposed to tear it down and build townhouses. At that point, Gay LeBaron and the Civic Arts Council came to the rescue and started a fundraising campaign to save the house. The Trioni and Cotting families donated $52,000 to the effort. The property was then purchased by Judy and Jack Leisring, who carefully brought it back to life. During the restoration work, when the project was almost finished, a fire started under the eaves as painters were preparing for the final coat. The house burned, but was saved from complete destruction. It sold again in 2006, and the Webley family, the current owners, have invested about $10 million to increase its size to 14,000 square feet and to restore the interior to its 1902 appearance. For a real treat, come visit this house and McDonald Avenue on Halloween night. This Victorian classical-style revival house was built in the 1880s for Thomas Hopper. Hopper was one of many early pioneers who came to California from Missouri in search of gold. It is said that he never learned to read or write, but was one of the wealthiest men in Sonoma County and could figure interest in his head. Eventually, he became president of the Santa Rosa Bank. When he lived here, Hopper rode from his house to the bank every day in a gold-plated Victorian coach with a footman. This Italianate Victorian-style house from 1877 may be the oldest on the street. It was used by Alfred Hitchcock in 1943 for the original filming of Shadow of a Doubt, starring Joseph Cotten.
I can't face the world in the morning. I must have coffee before I can speak.
Well, I don't mind
Back in 1894, this house was also the first meeting place of the Saturday Afternoon Club, a women's group still active to this day. When the club began, their annual dues were $1. This house is often referred to as a Victorian stick-style home because of the many decorative wooden pieces which are added to the exterior walls. Built in 1878 for a retired sea captain, some of the trees on the property are said to have been brought by him from around the world. Clement Young, who went on to become governor of California in the 1920s, lived here as a boy at the turn of the century. Frank Grace bought the house in 1901, and it remains in the Grace family ownership to this day. Built in 1907, this house combines elements of farmhouse Gothic revival with stick style. It has additions in keeping with the period, including the new carriage house in the back. Its first owner was George Stone, ticket agent for the Southern Pacific Railroad. His family crest is said to be the detail on the front. This stick Eastlake house was built in 1878 for Dr. and Mrs. Augustus Wright. The television remake of Shadow of a Doubt was made here in 1991.
Charlie! Mama! Charles! Help!
While this is not the same house that Alfred Hitchcock used for his original Shadow of a Doubt movie, it's just across the street. The house has been photographed many times for TV and print commercials. This two-story Craftsman-style home was designed by noted Petaluma architect Brainerd Jones in 1910. It was built for Paul T. Hamann. His father, Theodore Hamann, was in the partnership of the Hamann and Hone store and post office at the old Carrillo Adobe. Along with Julio Carrillo, these men were all early landowners and founders of Santa Rosa. The house still retains at least one original detail. On the front doorknob are the initials PH for Paul Hamann. Built for Congressman Thomas Geary in 1895, this is one of two houses on this street that remains in continuous family ownership to this day. The house originally had 3 stories and was a Victorian Queen Anne, but a fire burned the top floor in the early 1900s, and it was rebuilt in a Craftsman style. Original owner, Congressman Geary, was best known for the Geary Act of 1893, which extended the Chinese Exclusion Act indefinitely. The act was finally ended by Congress in 1943. In the 1990s, director Wes Craven made the movie Scream using this house.
Maybe he was having an affair with your mom.
Oh, you want to play psycho killer?
The Scream mask was found by the owner in a closet and adopted as the symbol of the movie. Built before 1898, this modified Italianate house was the residence of James Rue, superintendent of the McDonald Water Company. Mrs. Rue was appointed to be one of California's managers of the Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893. This classic revival-style home was built for the Potter family about 1890. Its most noted occupants were Ernest and Ruth Finley, early publishers of the Press-Democrat and owners of the KSRO radio station. In 1992, the Finleys donated millions of dollars to enable the city of Santa Rosa to build a state-of-the-art, multi-purpose community center and pool. This facility is known appropriately as the Finley Community Center. Another contender for the oldest house on McDonald Avenue was built in the late 1870s. Its style is Classic Revival, probably superimposed over an earlier structure. Mark McDonald lived here while he was building Mableton. Another noted resident was Thomas Thompson, editor of the Sonoma Democrat newspaper during and after the Civil War. Thompson was a Confederate supporter. He was elected California Secretary of State, named by President Cleveland to the diplomatic service, and made minister to Brazil. The house was later owned by Jackson Temple, a doctor and city health officer. The house has been extensively restored to its original grandeur. Now you've had a peek at some of the architecture and social history of McDonald Avenue. Thank you for traveling with us up and down the street and back and forth through time. By preserving and honoring history, we connect with our past and enrich our lives today.